The anguished cry of Emily echoed through the floor. What? Wait, why? No way. Hey! She was calling out to her computer. The test data. Amid the murmurs after her dire statement, I sat down in front of her computer. Isn't that the data I checked around 10 a.m. today? Emily nodded when I asked. In that case, it's fine. I smiled at her. Okay, let's move on to this. My name is Mark. I'm 30. I used to work in research at a company that develops and sells health supplements, but after getting on my boss's bad side, I've been relegated to door-to-door sales. Even if I say the right thing, it's hard to get the point across. It's tough to remember everything. I muttered this as I walked into the company in front of me. I handed my business card to the receptionist and explained I was here for sales, which earned me a skeptical look. We're also in the supplement business, so even if you try to sell us something. Faced with this puzzled expression, I looked down uncomfortably. Some of your employees might find our products suitable, right? And even if we're both in the health supplement business, you're focused on probiotics while we offer vegetable-based nutrition, so our approaches are different. Is it really wrong to market to a competitor? The air of confusion lingered. But the receptionist reluctantly connected me with the relevant department, and I managed to meet with a representative. Walk-in sales often end at the door. So I considered myself lucky to have gotten a meeting with this company despite the slim chance. I was shown to a small meeting room and waited for the representative. In the meantime, I glanced at the supplement I intended to pitch, but I pulled a previous product out of my bag and placed it on the table. This one is safer. I was told to promote the new product, but I felt reluctant. It's because the new product lacks sufficient data. I've repeatedly asked my boss to look into it, but he refused and ultimately removed me from research. The department where they organize files I was sent to afterward made no sense to me. We were always getting new data, yet I was supposed to organize 5-year-old documents, staple them together, and pack them into cardboard boxes. While there might be times when 5-year-old data is needed, it's usually enough to know where the files are. Still, I was expected to categorize everything meticulously, staple it all together, and then box it up. I asked why this was necessary. But then I was reassigned to sales. I understand that my behavior makes people think I'm too much to handle or a burden. But I always spoke up, thinking it was for the best. I rehearsed and carefully considered my words before speaking. I've struggled with this kind of thing since I was a kid, so I try hard, but it doesn't work very well. It only gets tougher when you're an adult, Emily. Murmuring that familiar name, I lowered my head. Then I heard a knock and the door opening. I stood up and introduced myself. I tried not to look directly at the person. I get too nervous to speak well if I make eye contact. Please explain the product. With that prompt, I started explaining the product confidently. I had been involved in its development, so I knew all its features by heart. I kept my gaze fixed on the product as I continued my pitch. You've been looking down the entire time. Could you please look up? It's hard to understand you like this. Please look me in the eye. I gasped and held my breath. I'm sorry. If I look at faces, I get nervous and can't explain well, so I'd prefer to keep it this way until I'm done. I spoke quickly, almost rambling, and the woman burst out laughing. You're still the same, Buzz. Buzz. That's a nickname only one person has ever called me. Hearing it made me instinctively look at her. What? Standing there was Emily, my former neighbor from elementary school. As a kid, I was always a bit of an inaccessible boy. I'd spend my time intently watching ant trails, leaves swaying in the breeze, fish in a tank, or flowers fluttering in the wind. My mom often looked at me with disgust on her face. And because of that, I had no friends. I found first-grade lessons too easy and unsatisfying. I was a cocky kid who would scoff at my classmates for playing tag. Even when the teacher encouraged me to join them, I'd respond with, running around and dodging people sounds tiring, I don't want to. So, with my excess free time, I'd hang out in the apartment courtyard, watching bugs and plants. I knew I needed to change. But I didn't know how. After my mother took me to various hospitals, I learned that I had a higher IQ than most, was naturally more interested in nature. and struggled to fit in with people. I was encouraged me to be interested in others, but that's not something you can simply be prompted into. No matter how hard adults try to get me interested in people, I couldn't respond positively. That's when I met Emily, the middle school girl who had just moved in next door. I was staring at a caterpillar when I suddenly noticed her sitting next to me, and I was shocked. What? When I finally spoke up, Emily, with a puzzled expression, asked, I really hate caterpillars, but what's so interesting about them? If I watch them, will I start to like them? With enthusiasm, I went on and on about caterpillars and their behavior. She was the first person to ever show interest in what I was observing. After my lengthy explanation, she chuckled and said, You're a strange kid. The word strange made me flinch. But she continued, But thanks to you, I think I might like caterpillars a little now. Teach me more sometime. She then got up and went back to the apartment next to mine. I can still clearly recall how the pleats in her skirt swayed as she walked away. After that, whenever I was dawdling after school, Emily would always show up and ask me questions. How do you not know this stuff as a middle schooler? Even when I said cheeky things like that, she'd respond calmly, Buzz, you just know too much. Her unfazed attitude reassured me, and I'd often end up sharing my current worries with her. You're so kind, Emily. If this were my friends, they'd be mad. She looked puzzled. What? You talk like that to your friends too? By this point, Emily had already figured me out and started using more challenging words. I nodded. Then let's train. Her unexpected suggestion widened my eyes. And also, when you're explaining things, you keep your head down the whole time. It feels like I'm learning from a machine when you explain. She pointed out, making me aware of a habit I hadn't noticed. Buzz, you never forget what you've learned. So maybe you can figure out, one by one, what's good and bad to say. I felt bad about taking up so much of her time. But she just smiled. We'll just use the time you usually spend watching bugs and flowers for training, so it's the same as before. Emily's smile was more revitalizing than anything. So, we began our training. We shouldn't talk about someone's appearance. Got it. But aren't cool and cute compliments? Why can't we use them? She smiled gently when I asked. For some people, they aren't compliments. If you can't gauge their feelings, avoid it for now. That made sense. Today, friends said we envy you for being smart, and if I tell them, just try harder, could it be wrong? Emily gave a wry smile and asked, That's not good. Did you actually say it? No, I stayed quiet when I wasn't sure. She then hugged me tightly. That's amazing. You're really growing, Buzz. So that's the right way to handle it. My head felt light as she held me close. But there were many times when staying silent in uncertainty wasn't an option, so whenever I faced something confusing, I'd consult Emily. As a result, I couldn't make friends who always hang out with, but I managed not to be completely avoided by my friends. I tried to pause and think instead of saying what is on my mind right away. I often didn't understand why some things were wrong to say and honestly didn't care if my friends felt happy or sad. But I didn't want Emily to dislike me. That was an important realization for me. Then came the turning point. Emily had to move. Her dad worked a job that required frequent relocations, typically every 3 years. This time, the transfer order came in March, exactly 3 years after they had moved in. I was about to start 4th grade. And she was about to enter her senior year of high school. What? That's weird. Changing schools in the last year of high school is wrong. You should protest against it. I thought I was saying the obvious, but Emily just shook her head gently. A company's decision is final. I was confused. She had taught me so much about right and wrong. This transfer order only seemed wrong for her future. She never taught me that we sometimes have to comply with bad decisions. When I insisted on that, she gave a tearful smile. I'm sorry, that's one thing I couldn't teach you. From here on, you'll face many unreasonable things. But don't give up, Buzz. You have a high IQ and a strong curiosity, so you have a lot of strengths. Don't let them go. I didn't understand, but my mom seemed to. Emily must have faced hardships as someone who constantly moved. Maybe she encountered something unreasonable at school. But she always smiled and taught me many things. I had no idea what she'd been holding back. Emily moved away the next day. I realized she had kept it from me until the very last day. I couldn't understand why. I at least wanted to get her contact information. But my mom told me not to take up more of her time. She said she'd support me from now on, but I couldn't engage with her the same way I did with Emily. And my mom never asked as enthusiastically, so my ability to understand people regressed. But I still have my memories of Emily. Those helped me make it this far. Though sometimes things were beyond my control, Emily's words, "Don't give up," always supported me deep down. So, even now, despite being pushed from research to sales, I persist until I can return to research. You still can't look people in the face when you explain, huh? But isn't that a bit of a challenge in sales? With that reasonable question posed, I explained my current situation to Emily. She let out a sigh. "You're still as clumsy as ever." Hearing that, I lowered my head. I thought I was managing fine, but things weren't going well. "Hey, why don't you switch to my company?" Emily's words widened my eyes. "I'm the project leader for a new supplement we're developing. I've been looking for skilled researchers." I felt confused. "Wait, you're in research, Emily?" She nodded. "Yeah, thanks to you, I got really good at biology." I stood there, giving a blank look. "Then why are you handling door-to-door sales?" She gave a wry smile at my flustered reaction. "I was in a different department for a meeting when the receptionist came with your business card. I recognized your name and volunteered to meet you. She gladly sent me to handle you, the troublemaker, trying to sell products to a rival company." I was even more bewildered. "But, since we're competitors, I'm not allowed to do that. There's a non-compete clause." Emily cut me off. "I'll make sure it's handled properly." Her confident words left me momentarily stunned. 1 month later. I'm now researching fungi under Emily's supervision. I loved observing insects and plants with the naked eye, but I also enjoyed using a microscope to study microorganisms. This lab felt like heaven to me. I steadily worked through the flood of test requests. "Your sharp mind is still intact, I see." Emily smiled at me. "All thanks to you. I'm grateful for you talking with my former company." Right after my visit, Emily immediately spoke to my previous employer. The higher-ups frowned at first, but since our research fields were a little different and they'd be getting rid of a problematic employee, they quickly approved. It felt bittersweet. But when one executive let slip that we couldn't have brought you back to research unless the current director resigned, I was truly grateful for reconnecting with Emily. I signed a contract just in case, but none of its terms seemed like things I'd violate, which was a relief. So, just like that, I resigned, used up my vacation days, and began working at Emily's company. Since she had explained my characteristics in advance, there were minor communication issues, but they were negligible. All my colleagues were kind and admired my focused research efforts. One day, an anguished cry from Emily echoed through the floor. "What? Wait, why? No way. Hey!" She was calling out to her computer. How pointless to call out like that. Such a waste of vocal cords. Of course, I didn't say that out loud. I just waited for her next words alongside my colleagues. "The test data, it's gone." Her terrible announcement made everyone gasp. People started asking if it could be recovered or if there was a backup. I walked over to her computer. "I don't know." "Recovery? It'll probably take a while. As for backups, although we've been instructed to back up frequently, it's easy to overlook it when we're immersed in research. I'm sorry. The only backup I have is from 2 days ago, right before we left." Emily was frustrated, but our colleagues were all relieved. We'd only lost yesterday's work and this morning's progress. They seemed to believe it was manageable. However, we finally got good data. Emily apologized to us, explaining that she had been so engrossed in her research, excited by the positive results, that she forgot to back up the data. "I'm sorry. I'll try my best to get good results again." As she spoke, I slipped past her and sat in front of her computer. "Buzz, no, Mark, what are you doing? I replied while typing on the keyboard. Isn't this the data I checked around 10 a.m. today? She moaned. She seemed to be trying to jog her memory. Oh, right. It was good data, so I asked you to replicate it using the same method. I showed you those results. I felt relieved after hearing her response. Okay, I remember it all. I focused intently, paying little attention to my words. What? Emily and our colleagues all gasped in surprise. Once I see something, I can remember it. It's like a camera. It's burned into my mind. I guess that's not something everyone has. I said this calmly while entering the data I remembered. While everyone stood in stunned silence, I finished inputting the data. It's done. Is this correct? Emily carefully examined the numbers on the screen. Oh, this. Yes, this result was good, and here too. It looks accurate, even if some bits are missing. I frowned. How rude. If I say I remember, I remember. Emily ruffled my hair. That brought me back to reality. Oh. I might have said something wrong because I was focused. My face went pale. Whenever I focused on something else, I couldn't keep my words in check. As I hesitantly glanced at my colleagues, they were smiling. Words like amazing, genius, and savior echoed around me. I looked up with wide eyes. She began massaging my head. I never knew you had this ability. Is your head tired? That must be tough. But thank you. You've been a big help. I'll still ask for the original data to be recovered, but it's not because I don't trust you. As she massaged my head, I nodded slightly. It felt so good, and my mind was awash with this pleasant feeling. You've helped me a lot, so I'll do anything you ask. What do you want? This pleasant sensation clouded my thoughts. Then, marry me. The room erupted with murmurs at my sudden marriage proposal. What? Emily's startled cry made me realize my mistake. Oh. I'm sorry. It just felt so nice, and I couldn't help myself. But it's not a lie. I've loved you since we were kids. My drifting mind let me say whatever I wanted. She suddenly stopped massaging my head. We're at work. Her yelling brought me back to reality. Oh, right. Work hours. We're supposed to work during work hours. Yes, I'm sorry. I lightly tapped my still floaty head and returned to my desk. Gradually, I realized the weight of my words, understanding that I'd just said something outrageous. But I was content with how I felt. I had always wanted to tell her, my first and only crush, whom I had lost touch with long ago. The outcome didn't matter to me. I was satisfied just having expressed my feelings. As the workday ended, I finished my tasks, clocked out, and waited for Emily to finish hers. Perhaps sensing the situation, the usual late stayers hurriedly left, leaving us alone. I watched Emily, who showed no signs of getting up to leave. I approached her desk. Hey, you're done already, aren't you? When I asked, she slowly turned her face towards me and, with a forced smile, said, "Caught me." Then clocked out. As I followed her out, I reassured her. Don't worry about it. She furrowed her brows at my words. Just because you said you'd do anything doesn't mean you have to marry me. I'm sorry. It just slipped out. Her face turned red. But, you do like me, right? It wasn't a lie? Hesitantly, she asked, and I nodded. Yeah. I do like you. But marrying me would be like a punishment game. If I were you, I'd definitely say no. Tears quickly welled up in her eyes and began to fall. Idiot. Why would you say that? She cried, but I felt no such warmth rising within me. I don't understand people's feelings. I don't even know why you're crying now. But I don't want you to cry. I want you to smile. So, the one for you isn't me. Yes, I get that. I nodded, trying to convince my own heart. I felt a slight sting in my chest. Then, she hugged me. Don't say things like being a punishment game or that it shouldn't be you. If you were going to say that, then you shouldn't have proposed to me. Wrapped in her embrace, I felt that comforting warmth again. I'm sorry. Was expressing my feelings wrong? But my head was all fuzzy, it just came out naturally. I couldn't stop it. She shook her head vigorously. That's not it. Buzz, you need to start liking yourself more. Don't talk about yourself like that. Her words puzzled me. That's hard for me. I hate myself. I hate how I can't fit in with people. She trembled. Then, marrying someone like me would be a punishment game too. I couldn't understand her words. You know, when I was training with you every day, Buzz. I didn't fit in with my class, didn't join any extracurricular activities, and had no friends. I acted arrogant training you, but I was just a girl who was terrible with people. I was using training with you to pass the time and distract myself from my loneliness. Pretty awful, right? She explained that with each move due to her father's job transfers, she tried making friends but grew tired of the cycle of making and losing them. Especially during her sensitive middle school years when she moved next to me. And there I was, an elementary school student struggling with socializing. She told me she trained with me to console herself. Whatever the reason or circumstance, it doesn't matter. Back then, I needed you. Without you, I probably would have become a much worse adult. So, the fact that you moved next door to me back then was lucky for me. That doesn't make marrying you a punishment game. Emily laughed through her tears. Why do you think I'm still unmarried at 38? Always working, not charming enough? Would marrying a 38-year-old woman be a punishment game for a 30-year-old you, right? I tilted my head, puzzled. Why would an age difference be a punishment game? Oh, because of wrinkles or skin or something? I don't care about. Before I could finish, she smacked my back. That's another thing you shouldn't say to a woman. Remember that. Feeling a tingling sensation on my back, I replied. Don't talk about wrinkles or skin to a woman, got it, I'll remember that. She chuckled. This brings me back memories. Her tone softened. But, I just love you, Emily. You're definitely not a punishment game. She chuckled softly. Well, how about these two people who think of themselves as punishment games, try dating? My heart suddenly pounded, and she laughed. The heart is always honest. Her laughter was irresistibly sweet, and my heart pounded even more. A few days later, the data she had lost was recovered. The numbers matched perfectly with the data I had recreated from memory, which surprised everyone. As I struggled to find the right words to say, she smiled. Everyone finds your way of talking when you're focused and musing. So you don't have to overthink here. Hearing that, I looked at my colleagues. They all smiled at me. It was a sight I'd never seen before. I felt tears welling up. Unable to express this feeling, I lowered my head and nodded. And everyone laughed again. Their laughter wasn't mocking, it left me feeling warm and light. Years have passed since then. Emily and I got married. After we started dating, I understood what she meant when she said she wasn't charming. When work gets hectic, she becomes deeply immersed. She talks less, eats less, and goes to bed quickly. But to me, that's a clear sign that she's busy at work, so I don't feel neglected or worried. Since we work at the same place, I also know when things are busy, so there's no issue. The age difference never bothered me either. She is 8 years older, but she's adorable, and I know she'll still be cute even when she's a wrinkly old lady. Oops, I'm not supposed to talk about wrinkles. But it's okay to think it in my head, right? Anyway, she's not a punishment game, she's an amazing woman. As for me, I still don't fully understand people's feelings. But she always understood me. Whether that's good or bad for her, I can't say. Still, when she's not too busy at work, she always smiles. And I just trust in that smile. Not long ago, I used to work a job I disliked and lived without being understood. But now, I do the job I love, live with the woman I love, and work alongside her. Sometimes, my colleagues ask me if it's suffocating to work and live with my wife. I always shake my head honestly. Getting to be by her side all the time makes me the happiest person in the world. I hope to always be the man who stays by her side.